Which Way to Mecca, Jack? By William Peter Blatty. Read by Scott King. Chapter 1. A Sheik Grows in Brooklyn. My parents immigrated to the United States from Lebanon in 1923, and from the moment I toddled into the age of reason, my mother initiated vast attempts at driving me back out of it with incessant verbal blasts about the beauty and wonder of the old country. "William," she would begin in her inimitable Arabic dialect. "William, when you grow up, I'm sending you to Lebanon so you can marry an Arab girl. My God, Arab girls are beautiful." Well-meaning neighbors to our Lower East Side apartment made now and then feeble passes at advising my mother not to nag the boy too much, but trying to intimidate Mama was like buttermilk trying to intimidate Hungarian goulash. A dark-eyed, stubborn, truculent woman, she barreled through life bent on ignoring road signs. Only once, when my uncles pressured her to apply for United States citizenship, did she ever give the appearance of being swayed. But when the court examiner asked her to name the president's replacement in the event of his death in office, my mother craftily replied, "The president's son," and scored her usual smashing victory. Another time, in the summer of 1939, the president himself visited our neighborhood to officiate at the formal opening of the Queens Midtown Tunnel. The tunnel spilled onto East 35th Street, just 3 doors down from our apartment building, and "I want to meet him," rumbles Mama when she heard FDR was coming. My uncles, Moses, Elias, and Abdullah, told her it was impossible. On the day of the ceremony, my mother and I, together with my uncles, were standing at the outer circumference of a cordon of spectators about 30 feet from the president's automobile. In her left hand, Mama held a mysterious brown paper shopping bag, but I paid no attention to it at the time. All eyes were on FDR as he reached out from his car with gold-plated scissors and neatly snipped the broad blue ribbon that stretched from one side of the tunnel entrance to the other. Then, before anyone knew what was happening, my mother was grimly advancing on the president. It must have looked like an assassination attempt, because flashbulbs started exploding. The president dropped the scissors in horror, and a covey of Secret Servicemen drew their revolvers and surrounded the car. They were too late. Mama had gotten to the president. "I want to shake you hand," she rumbled at FDR, and then she reached out and crunched the president's paw in her effortlessly dynamic grip. FDR smiled weakly. When Mama leaned over and reached into the mysterious shopping bag, 2 of the Secret Servicemen made a dive for her, but they barely got a glove on my mother before she had withdrawn from the bag a large jar filled with a murky, rust-colored substance. She handed it to the president, who was astonished. "Make jelly," Mama grunted, "for when you have company." "Might be nitro, Chief," warned one of the Secret Servicemen. But FDR winked at him and accepted the jar. "Thank you, madam," he said. "Quince jelly," added my mother matter-of-factly. "Lebanese quince jelly. My God, it's delicious." FDR smiled and shook my mother's hand again, and I had to card him for sheer guts. 3 Secret Service agents escorted Mama back to the spectators' circle, and as her gaze fell upon my uncles, her eyes flickered briefly with triumph. She was unstoppable, and she knew it. Chapter 2. My mother's irresistible force has even been commemorated in sterling. I had once copped a silver loving cup in a beautiful baby contest, and my God, he was a beautiful baby. Mama would roar exultantly whenever she would look at the trophy. Occasionally, she would cap her performance by leering cunningly in my direction and murmuring, "You Mama take good care of you, William." I never knew what she meant by this. I asked one of my uncles finally, and he reluctantly confided that Mama had take care of me during the Zweiback Caperby, bribing one of the judges, thus rendering me the only living mortal ever to have won a fixed, beautiful baby contest. My emotions during this revelation were indescribable, but one thought was clear. No Everest was beyond my mother's reach. Her page of life had been printed in boldface. My father, on the other hand, was light italics. A pixie-ish, introspective sort of Arab, he separated from my mother when I was 7, and it was all because of a newspaper. Mama had for years been baffled by her sporadic and impatient attempts to learn written English, and my father, who's mastered it quickly, had a little trick of deliberately infuriating her by sinking into an overstuffed chair in the living room, luxuriously rustling and unfolding the evening newspaper, and reading it. "Look at him! Look at him!" my mother would roar in a white fury. "Look at the devil! He's a devil!" She was insanely jealous of his ability. Of course, I'm not sure that that's all there was to it, and it could be that Papa had finally had his fill of Mama's tortologue about the old country. But whatever it was, one night my Arab daddy just folded his newspaper and silently stole away. I missed him. Had he hung in there a while longer, my father might have proved a paper-rustling Coeur de Lion set against my mother's onrushing Saladin. But the way things worked out, it was Mama's boat race all the way, and the first language that I conned was Arabic. Which is how I was exiled at 4. That's right, 4. I'm certain about the age because I have almost total recall, and what I can't remember my mother has filled in, for all my life she has boasted of my feats as a tot. "My God, my William, he never dirty his diaper," was one of her more incredible brags in the presence of strangers or girls I was trying to impress, and a frequent and interesting variation was, "When he was 2, my William, he look just like a baby Jesus." Swell. Mama had her memories, I've got mine. Here are mine. Chapter 3. I was 4 and chumless, and we lived on East 17th Street. Each day I would stand alone at the curb, watching the pale-faced boys across the street playing with their forts and lead soldiers. They were rich. Anyone who owned lead soldiers had to be rich. So it staggered me mightily when, one day, as I stood brooding on things sandy and Arabic, they beckoned me to cross the street and join them. Zocker's gang! I was in. The boys were considerably more mature than I, about 6, I would say, and accustomed to giving orders to 4-year-olds. The only thing they weren't accustomed to was giving them in Arabic. "Find me a stick," one of them lisped at me, and I guess he wanted it for a sword, but being somewhat inexpert in lisped English, my only response was to fix him with a glassy stare. "Find me a stick," he shouted. My eyes widened in bewilderment. I took a step backward and suddenly had a runny-nose awareness of my heel crunching against fragile, myriad, uniformed lead. "Oh, you stupid!" shrilled the lisper, and glancing behind me, I saw that I had scattered and crushed a platoon of lead infantry, a cannon, and an obviously senile old Indian scout. Confused and distraught by his screaming, Ramut! I flung at the shouting boy, which is an old Arabic expression meaning, quote, blowed out your barracks bag, Charlie. And I fled whimpering across the street. That was my last attempt at rapprochement with the pale-faced children in that neighborhood, or in any neighborhood, for a long time to come. And the beginning of my Arab exile. Once, I did find a companion in a little colored girl named Frankie. She couldn't speak Arabic either, but at least she didn't lisp, and besides, there was precious little communication required for the making of mud pies. Frankie was muy simpatico, all right, but Mama ended that little affair, and believe me, Mr. Wyron, it had nothing to do with race. What happened was that during a routine medical checkup at a public health clinic, an awe-inspiring surfeit of wax had to be removed from my ears, and my mother was convinced that I had caught it from Frankie. "You catch it from Frangie!" she bellowed, and the contradictory and crushing weight of medical opinion in this regard had about as much effect upon her as a weak-jawed mole trying to burrow through Gibraltar. If Albert Schweitzer had come riding into our kitchen on a unicorn to tell my mother she was wrong, she would merely have roared, "You shut up, you crazy! He catch it from Frangie!" And the good doctor would have been immensely relieved to get back to Africa and some nice, predictable headhunters. As for Frankie, I was forbidden to speak to her, and as far as that goes, I couldn't bear to look at the hurt in her eyes. Her mouth open, a shovel and pail hanging limply from her hands. "There's mud pies that need making," her sorrowful expression seemed to be telling me, and each time I saw her, I would instinctively poke a finger into my ear, scrape it around a little, and wish that I were God. But this was not possible.